all bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskeys are bourbon. And because of this fact, not all Manhattans are made the same. Here at Mistral, we honor both versions of this time-honored classic cocktail. And for over 20 years, Mistral has been offering its guests the most intimate bistro experience with a beautiful French menu, an extensive award-winning wine list, gracious service, and of course, this beautiful bar. So a customer comes in and I'm going to offer him choices. He can either have a bourbon or a rye Manhattan. So the criteria for a whiskey to be a bourbon is that it has to be, first of all, made in America. Because not all whiskeys are made in America. They can be made in Scotland, they can be made in Ireland, they can be a Canadian whiskey. So bourbon is unique to America. The other thing about bourbon is that it is aged in new charred oak barrels, which gives bourbon its smoky flavor, its rich smoothness. And most bourbons are 51% corn, so that gives it a more sweet, smooth taste and notes to it. So if someone comes in and they say, give me a bourbon Manhattan, I'm going to reach for Maker's Mark, because Maker's Mark is a really great Kentucky whiskey. And I really like this one because the family, the Samuels family who makes Maker's Mark, they actually honored their Scottish heritage by maintaining the spelling of whiskey without the E, because most bourbons that are made and whiskeys that are made in the United States and Ireland, they're usually spelled with an E. So they just did it a little bit differently and honored their family's heritage. So with the Maker's Mark Manhattan, you're going to start with 1.5 ounces of the Maker's Mark bourbon. And that gives it a really smoky, as I said, because it's aged in the new charred oak barrels, it has a really smoky flavor, and it's a little bit, it has those tones to it. So we're going to use a sweet vermouth, 1 ounce of sweet vermouth. And with a Manhattan, if you use sweet and dry vermouth, you can have your perfect Manhattan. Today we're just doing a sweet, regular sweet Maker's Mark Manhattan. And to make it just a little bit sweeter, we're going to use the maraschino cherry. We're going to use a traditional maraschino cherry in this Manhattan. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add just about a teaspoon of the maraschino juice. And this is what the Maker's Mark Manhattan calls for. I'm going to add a little bit of ice. Give it a stir. And you're going to stir it in the glass just until the glass feels cold to the touch. And you just stir it around, and you always stir your Manhattans. The rule is usually that if you can see through the drink, you should probably stir it. But again, that just depends on your taste, your customer's taste, but I'm going to stir this one. You get it nice and cold. Get a chilled cocktail glass. We're going to go ahead and strain this into the chilled cocktail glass. And you can see that it's got that nice rich color to it as well. And we're going to garnish it with maraschino cherry. And there you have the Maker's Mark Bourbon Manhattan. Another version of the Manhattan is now made with rye. And so the rye is the actual original American spirit. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab this Templeton rye. And this is the Templeton Rye Prohibition era whiskey. And you guessed it, it's from the Prohibition era. And people who are family members of Al Capone from the Prohibition era have said that Templeton rye was what he would call the good stuff. So I'm going to use the good stuff for my rye Manhattan. We're going to go ahead and we're going to use 2 ounces of Templeton rye. And rather than use the regular sweet vermouth, I'm going to use this Carpano Antica, because this is another type of vermouth, and I'm saying that some of the bartenders are saying that they would go ahead and christen their children in this stuff because they love the way that it tastes so much. So I'm going to do 1 ounce of the Carpano Antica. And because rye is crisper and a little bit drier, I'm going to go ahead and add a couple dashes of this Angostura bitters. Now we're going to add some ice. We're going to give this a stir. Again, stirring the Manhattan until the glass feels cold to the touch. I'm going to grab a chilled cocktail glass. Go ahead and strain that into our cocktail glass. And with the rye Manhattan, Rather than use a maraschino cherry, I found these beautiful spirited cherries. These are from Cherith Valley Gardens, and they are a cherry that is been soaked in cherry liqueur. So that definitely adds a little bit of a special element to this rye Manhattan. I grabbed these at Elmore Liquor. Mary at Elmore Liquor found them, and she was just hoping that someone could do something with these gorgeous cherries. So I have put it into this beautiful Templeton Rye Manhattan. So whether you prefer your Manhattan with bourbon or rye, we can accommodate your taste, and it is a wonderful drink to have before a nice dinner of traditional pommes frites and maybe a steak au poivre.